So we're starting from Lamed Vav Amud Bet, the bottom 4 lines from the bottom, or 5 lines from the bottom. The Gemara is quoting the Mishnah. The Gemara is quoting the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Ishmael, Bameh Dvarim Amurim B'Sadeh Halavan. When do you need the chazakah of 3 years? In Sadeh Halavan. What's Sadeh Halavan? Sadeh Halavan is, they say, it's a field that they plant only like vegetables and things like that. So why do they call it Sadeh Halavan? Because there's no shade. It's Lavan. There's no shade. So that's why they call it Sadeh Halavan. So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye Mide Rabbi Ishmael Nishma LeRabanan. From the words of Rabbi Ishmael, we understand Rabbanan. What is this? Because Rabbi Ishmael said, they say, Hayu shloshim ilanot mimata asara lebet se'ah. Okay, so he has 30 trees, and inside, normally we know that you need, if you have 10 trees per se'ah, you need 10 trees per se'ah. That's the radius that's the amount of trees that you should be planting in one area. Otherwise, it's too much for the land to handle. So he says you have 30 trees and 3 se'ah. Okay, so that gives you the ratio of 10 to 1. Okay. Achal asara b'shana zu, v'asara b'shana zu, v'asara b'shana zu, harei zu chazaka. So he says, if you eat 10 from 10 of the trees in 1 year, then you eat 10 of the trees in another year, and the third year you eat another year, this is considered to be chazaka. So, says the Gemara, Lav mi amar Rabbi Ishmael. Didn't Rabbi Ishmael say, Chad pera have chazaka lekule pere? Didn't he say that one is a chazakah for everything? What does that mean? Rabbi Ishmael in the Mishnah, what did he say? He said that if a person, he eats the grapes, he eats the figs, and he eats the dates, right? 3 different crops, even if it's technically in the same year. This is what Rabbi Ishmael said. Rabbi Ishmael said in the Mishnah that if a person eats the dates, then he eats the grapes, then he eats the figs, this is already considered to be chazakah, meaning shloshat tivuot, 3 different types of harvests is considered to be as if it's 3 years, and it's going to be considered the chazakah. So Abaye, what did Abaye just say? Abaye said, we extend this, we make it even further, and we take it to the point where if he's eating from 10 trees every year, meaning there's a total of 30 trees in the field, and he eats 10 trees this year, 10 trees the next year, 10 trees the next year, this for Chachamim is going to be considered enough. Meaning Chachamim, they're going to need you to have 3 years, but they're not going to need you to eat all the trees. They're going to need you to eat only part of the trees, and then this is going to be considered to be chazakah according to Chachamim. They could be, yeah, 100%. Okay. Hachanami, so he says over here, Hanu have chazakah. So over here too, by us, he says that it's going to be chazakah lehani. Vehani have chazakah lehani. So the 10 trees that he's eating this year is going to be chazakah for the other 20. Then the 10 trees that he's going to he's going to eat next year is going to be considered chazakah for the other 20, the other 20 that are remainder. And then therefore it's going to be 3 years of chazakah considered for the whole field. Says the Gemara, Vehani mili delo afiku. This is only when what? That the other trees, okay, they did not give fruit that year. Aval afiku velo achal la havia chazaka. He says, but if they gave fruit and he didn't eat from those fruit, so then it's not considered to be a chazaka. Okay, vehu the bazi bazuze, and also what else does it have to be? It has to be that the 10 trees that he's eating from, it has to be like scattered. Meaning, what does that mean? You can't eat 10 trees in this portion of the field and then the next year he eats 10 portions in this portion of the field, and then 10 portions in this portion of the field. What does he have to do? From the whole entire field of 30, he has to eat from this one, this one, this one, this one. It has to be randomly scattered around the trees, and only then is it going to be considered chazakah. However, if he only eats from one part in 1 year, and then another part in another year, another part in another year, then it's not going to be chazakah for the whole field. Okay? You cannot, no, again, you cannot split only in one, exactly. You cannot. Because that's not going to be considered chazakah. Why is that not going to be considered chazakah? Because since 10 trees per se'ah is considered to be one field, so it's as if he's only eating in one field. He's not eating from the whole field. He's only eating in one field. And then when the next year he eats from the next one, right? So he doesn't have a chazakah for the other fields because they're considered to be their own fields. When they're all together and then he eats scattered around, so then they have a chazakah for everything all together. Okay? Now the Gemara is going to talk about something a little bit different. Okay? Now, a person, what happens over here? A person sold his field. However, what did he do? He decided he's selling the land to one person, and he's selling all the trees to another person. Okay? So it says, a person sold the field, and obviously there was a chazakah for the ilanot, and then another for the trees, and then another person came and he sold the land to him. Amar Rav Zavid, ze kana ilanot v'ze kana karka. Okay, so Rav Zavid says that each one has only whatever they bought, and that's it. Meaning this guy only has his trees, and this guy only has the land and no trees. Matkif la Rav Papa. So Rav Papa asked him, imken. אין לו לבעל אילנות בקרקע כלום, למה לבעל קרקע, לבעל אילנות, הכל אילנך, שכל וזיו. He says, if you're going to tell me, based on what Rav Zavid said, what did Rav Zavid just say? That you have only the trees and only the land. So if so, what's going to happen? Says Rav Papa, he's going to go to the guy that bought the trees and tell him, hey, your trees are in my land. Take your trees, get out of here. Right? Because you're not allowed to benefit from my land. So take your trees, get out of here. That's obviously not the case, meaning that's obviously not what's supposed to happen. So, Ela Amar Rav Papa, what does Rav Papa say instead? Ze kana ilanot v'chatzi karka, v'ze kana ilanot, v'ze kana chatzi karka. So he says, instead, what's the halacha? That when he buys the trees, he buys trees together with some of the land. And then when he buys the land, the guy only buys the land. Yes.
Is it there is a law that you cannot take fruit out?
No. So you're not allowed to cut it down.
Yeah.
But if you're uprooting the tree,
from the
you take the whole tree out together with the roots and you plant it somewhere else. This is no problem.
So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Asking to move it.
Exactly. He's saying, yeah, listen, your trees are not here, so take them out. Right?
And it's also only
no, everywhere. You're not allowed to cut down fruit trees anywhere. Yeah, there are again, as everything, there are loopholes, but you need a rabbi for every single time because it's not simple. It's really not simple. We say ki ha'adam etz hasadeh. A person is considered to be like a tree, and if chas v'shalom a person cuts down a fruit tree, we don't want to, it's not simple. Yeah, that's one of them also. That's one of the reasons that we don't do. We do the halakeh. We do it after 3 years usually. Again, according to Aliza, there are those that the Moroccans have. Some Moroccans have the custom after a year even to do it. Everyone according to their minhag. So says the Gemara, Pshita, it's obvious. Machal kalka v'shiel ilanot lefanav. Yesh lo karka. Okay, it's obvious that if a person he sold land, right, and he left some trees on it, okay, that he איך קוראים לזה? He has some of the land for himself. Okay, so a person he sells his land. He has his land, but he doesn't sell the trees. He says, "I'm selling it to you. I'm selling you the land minus the trees." Okay. If a person is selling land, machal kalka v'shier ilanot lefanav, and he leaves trees, meaning he tells the person, "I'm selling you the land, but I'm not selling you the trees." Okay, pshita, it's obvious. Yesh lo kalka, that in this case he obviously has some of the land, meaning that when he's selling the land,
the same principle. If you have the tree, you have also.
yeah, but this is more like Rav Papa, meaning he's saying he's in a way, because before we had a machloket, Rav Zavid and Rav Papa. Rav Zavid said you get nothing. Rav Papa said no, you get some part. But over here it's saying that it's obvious that when the owner is selling the land and he doesn't sell the trees, that he obviously left for himself some part of the land. So it says, Shita machal kalka v'shir ilanot lefanav yesh lo kalka. He has the land. V'afilu leRabbi Akiva. And this is even true to Rabbi Akiva, the Amar mocher be'ain yafe mocher. When a person sells his land, he sells be'ain yafe. Okay, yafa. Okay, so and hani mili gabe bor vedut delo mechashru ba'ara. Aval it's a bor is like a pit and a cistern, they call it in English. A cistern. It's a type of it's to help store the rainwater, right? Back then, to help store the rainwater. It's a pit in the ground that they used to keep rainwater inside.
What is deep?
Yeah, it's cistern. That's what a cistern is. They would have a hole in the ground, they would line it with cement or whatever it is, and this would be specifically to keep rain. Okay? Because again, they don't have they didn't have water like we have a sink.
I know that, but it's a bowl. I don't know what it's deep.
Same concept.
Thank
you. Okay, so he says that even Rabbi Akiva that normally says that when you sell something, right? When the person is selling it, he sells it with a good eye. What does that mean? That with a good eye, he sells it. He's large, meaning he's generous. Okay. However, when it comes to the trees, even Rabbi Akiva agrees that he's not generous and he doesn't sell everything with it. Okay, meaning to say that when a person sells, what was Rabbi Akiva's case that he said when a person sells, he sells generously? When a person sells the field,
For the land.
When a person sells his field, okay, and inside the field he has bol vedut, meaning he has pits and he has cisterns. He tells the guy, "I'm selling you the field minus the pits and the cisterns." Okay. In this case, Rabbi Akiva says that because he says that I'm selling you the land, he's selling the entire land minus just the area for that, meaning he's not even leaving for himself a path to walk to those things. And now if he wants to access the cisterns that are his, he's going to have to go to the owner and ask either permission to walk on his property, or he's going to have to buy a path to be able to go there.
The dude here, number 14, it's the walls. You make partition. You have the pit and you have the partition
Inside the pit.
inside the pit around the lips of the pit.
Okay. Chazak. Okay. So he says that normally Rabbi Akiva says that in this case, what do we do? Mocher be'ain yafa. That means he sells it generously. Okay. Aval ilanot. De kamach chashi be'ara, that they weaken the land, meaning they need the land for their nutrients. Shiure shier. He obviously left some for himself. What does that mean? That means that when he sells it, even according to Rabbi Akiva, normally you wouldn't leave a path. But Rabbi Akiva agrees that when it comes to trees, he leaves some of the area around that's still going to belong to him. Okay? The iloshier, says the Gemara, because if you don't say that, le male akor ilana vezid Vizil machal ilanot. Vizil. Okay? He's going to tell him, take your trees and get out of here. So even Rabbi Akiva, who normally says that you sell everything minus exactly what you didn't sell, in this case he agrees that the trees, no, there is some part of the land that you keep. Why? Because otherwise the guy's going to tell him, hey, get your trees off of my property. Okay. Machal ilanot v'shiyel kakal lefanav. Okay, if a person he sold the field, he sold the trees, and he left the land. Okay, so before in the first case, what did we say? He sold the land and he left the trees. Now he's selling the trees and he's leaving the land, meaning he sold the trees to someone else, and he said no, but the land belongs to me. Okay, Plukta de Rabbi Akiva v'Rabanan. This is a machloket Rabbi Akiva and Rabbanan. LeRabbi Akiva de Amar mocher be'ain yafeh mocher. According to Rabbi Akiva, that says that when the seller he's selling whatever it is, he sells generously. Itle, he agrees that the guy is also going to have part of the field. So when he sells it, he has part of the field. LeRabbanan letle. So Rabbanan are going to say that the guy doesn't have any part of the field. Okay. LeRabbi Akiva itle, says the Gemara. Now the Gemara is going to explain. LeRabbi Akiva itle, according to Rabbi Akiva, that says that he has. Ve'afilu leRav Zavid de Amar en lo. And this is true even according to Rav Zavid that says that he normally wouldn't have. Why? Hani mini gabe shene lekuchot. De Elmaleh ki hechi dilididi letli bilanot lididach nami letlach bekarka. Aval hacha mocher be'ain yafe mocher. So he says, in the case of Rav Zavid, what was the case of Rav Zavid? That the guy sold the field to one person and the trees to the other person. What did Rav Zavid say? He said that the guy who has the trees has only the trees. The guy has the land, only the land, right? Says over here, in this case, it's going to be different. Why is this case going to be different? Where the owner sells the trees only and not the land. In this case, Rabbi Akiva is going to agree, in this case, he says even Rav Zavid is going to agree that you get part of the land. Why do you get part of the land? Because in the first case, since it's two sellers, it's two buyers, so each one is going to say, what do you mean? What, you're giving him on my account? You're giving him benefit on my account. So it doesn't work. But over here, what's happening? He's the one that's selling the trees. If he's the one selling the trees, he's selling with generously. So obviously, when he's the one selling it, so he's going to say, okay, listen, I sold you the field. I'm going to give you also part of the land so that the tree can exist. Okay. LeRabbanan letle, says the Gemara. According to Chachamim, the buyer does not get any part of the land. Why? And this is true even according to Rav Papa, that normally said that you would have to give the buyer part of the land around the trees. So he says, why in the case of Rav Papa did he say that, did Chachamim say, or did Rav Papa say that you get both land, both the trees and part of the land for the trees? Because when the person is selling it to two different people, right? When the person is selling it to two different people, so he doesn't care anymore what's going on with the land, right? The land doesn't belong to him anymore. So he's saying, okay, listen, I'm selling you the trees, and obviously, you need some of the trees to survive, so I'm going to give you some of the land, right? But this is only true because he's selling the land to someone else. But when he keeps the land for himself, he's going to be as cheap as possible, and he's going to tell you, hey, I sold you the trees only, the trees and the trees only. That's it.
You use the water and you use the electricity. I give you nothing. I give you.
Yeah, he's gonna sell a room in his house, and he's gonna tell him, "Okay, I sold you the room. Now find a way to get to the room without passing through my house." Okay. So says the Gemara, Amri Nahardai, Achalan Retzufin. Okay, En lo chazaka. If the trees, if the trees were planted close together, meaning they were planted without giving them the proper space needed for each individual tree. Okay.
More than 10%.
Yes. Total, there's 3 se'ah and 30 trees, but in practice, it's not spread out evenly. They're very dense. Okay, so en lo chazaka. This is not considered to be chazaka. Why is this not considered to be chazaka? Because he says that since these trees are eventually going to be going to have to be uprooted, right? Because if the trees are planted too close together, so then you're going to have to uproot the tree, because then both trees are going to end up dying, because there's not going to be enough nutrients in the ground to support both of the trees. So he says, since the tree is going to have to be uprooted, there's no chazaka. Uprooted, l'arraché. Arraché. Or déraciner. Déraciner. לעקור אותו, בקיצור. אותו דבר. בדיוק. יאללה. מתקיף לרבה. So Rava asks a question. אלא מעתה, היי מישרה דאס pasta. Okay? Not pasta, but it says there's a field of aspasta. Okay, it's a type of grain that they used to plant. Okay, and they would purposely plant it very, very crowded together. Okay,
So only for animals.
huh?
Only animals.
Yeah, they purposely planted together, close together, and then they're eventually gonna uproot it. If so, b'maikanila. If you're saying that because the tree is going to be uprooted, you don't have chazakah, right? So if so, how are you ever going to be able to have a kinyan? How are you ever, not kinyan, a chazakah? How are you going to be ever able to have a chazakah with the field of aspasta, right? Because these trees are always going to be uprooted. So how are you going to have chazakah in those things? Ela amarava. So Rava says, you're right. What do we have to do? We have to find some other solution. Ela amarava macharan retzufin en lo karka. Okay, if a person sells a field that's too dense, okay, so then he doesn't have the land with it. Okay. Amar Rabbi Zera ketanai. This is machloket tanaim. Why? Kerem shu natua al pachot me-400. Rabbi Shimon omer eno kerem. V'chachamim omrim hare zu kerem v'ro'im et ha'emtzaim ki'ilu enan. So he says, when you plant a vineyard, right, you need to have a certain space in between each vine. Now, there is also halacha that this is what we're going to be dealing with. It's called kilai hakerem, right? Kilaim. That when you have a vine, you're not allowed to plant another grain next to it. There's a certain amount. Now, if it's an individual vine, you need 6 tfachim in between, or you can't plant another grain 6 tfachim next to the vine, an individual one.
This is the most space needed, no? Fine. Minimum.
The minimum is 6 tvachim.
No.
However, if it's a vineyard, you need 4 amot. Okay? You need 4 amot. So if you have a vineyard, you need 4 amot before you can plant something else. If it's an individual vine, you need 6 tvachim. Now, what happens when Ama is basically half a meter, okay? And טפח זה כן. הבנת. Okay? So says the Gemara, if what happens when the vine is too crowded? Right? The vineyard is too crowded. Normally you need a certain amount of space in between each vine, but now it's too crowded. So what happens? You're going to eventually have to uproot every other row. Okay? So that means that the row in middle, since the row in middle is going to be uprooted, okay? Now, do I need 4 amot to plant a grain next to it, or is it going to be enough for 6 tfachim? One amma is 6 tfachim.
So then
6 tfachim is 1 amma, or 4 amot.
3 for vine.
For a vineyard. For 4 amot for a vineyard. 6 tfachim for a vine, which means one amma. A vine, individual
Vineyard.
vineyard is a bunch of them together, and a vine is a single one.
Like forest and a tree.
Okay, so he says, "Kerem שהוא נטוע פחות על פחות 4 אמות, Rabbi Shimon אומר, אינו kerem. It's not going to be considered a kerem. Why is it not a kerem? Because it's going to have to be uprooted, right? In that case, what can you do? You can plant within after 6 tfachim, as long as it's not within the 4 of the next one. והחכמים אומרים, הרי זו kerem. It's considered to be kerem, even though it's going to have to be uprooted. ורואים את האמצעים כאילו אינן, and we look at the middle ones as if they're not there. Says the Gemara, אמרי נעדי, היימן דזבין דקלה לחברי, כנילה משיפולה ועד תהומה. So he says, if a person sells a dikla, he sells a palm tree, okay, to his friend, so he buys the palm tree and all the earth that goes underneath it until the tehom. Okay, move on. Okay, so that's it. He goes, that means when he buys the tree, he buys the land directly underneath the tree. So the guy, the owner, or whoever has the field can never tell the guy, hey, get your tree out of my property. Why? Because the tree has the land that's directly underneath it all the way through. Amen. Amen.
falls from the tree.